This is Grace Notes. I'm Alan Button, and our guests today are Lucie and Ron Saylor. Ron and Lucie are volunteers extraordinaire, and between the two of them have 4 sons and a number of grandchildren, and they are very active, particularly in the Emmanuel Thrift Shop in Southern Pines. Lucie and Ron, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're glad to be here. Thank you for having us.
It's good to have you here. If we could, let's have you tell us first a little bit about how you got to where you are in Moore County, North Carolina.
My husband is a golfer, and he's a native Iowan, and I wanted to get him back to North Carolina, where I grew up.
You grew up in the Raleigh area?
I grew up in Raleigh, and we weren't real sure that we wanted to live in Raleigh. So Pinehurst was a very reasonable alternative since he loved to play golf. So that was the attraction, and we had a part-time place at Longleaf in Southern Pines for a number of years.
Gotcha. Ron, you want to add anything to that?
We commuted from Iowa for about 4 or 5 years, and she's right. It was a 20-hour drive.
Because you were practicing law in Iowa?
I was. Practiced there for about 40 years in a smaller community called Williamsburg, Iowa. But with Lucie moving to this small community, she started the volunteering bug many, many, many years ago.
What kinds of things were you involved with volunteer-wise in Iowa, Lucie?
My favorite thing that I did was Meals on Wheels. I loved going to the individual homes and taking their meals and learning a little bit about the personalities. I would often take them flowers, and it's amazing how that would brighten someone's day. And that the next time I would go to take meals, they'd say, "Will you refresh my flowers for me?" Or, "Are you going to bring me more flowers?" And so that was my first opportunity. Volunteering had just been in my blood. It started back actually when I lived in Raleigh before I met and married Ron, and he took me out to the hinterlands. And that's sort of how my volunteer career got started.
And you've continued your volunteer work in a big way since you've come back to North Carolina.
We have. Ron and I both enjoy being together. That's kind of...
We're kind of a team.
We're kind of a team. That's a good way to put it.
Excuse me. You get one of us, you get us both. That may or may not be a good thing always, but most of the time it's pretty good. She's more creative, got that art approach, and I'm a little more pragmatic. I'm more of the accountant, lawyer type, so we work pretty good together.
That does sound like a pretty good team. Tell you what, I want to hear more about what you do volunteer-wise in North Carolina, but before we get there, let's talk about this song that you've identified, What a Wonderful World by Sam Cooke. What is it about that is special to you?
Well, it is a wonderful world. There's no question. And we just think loving people and letting them feel blessed and knowing that if they can do that, no amount of education or anything that you do is going to make a difference if you don't love one another. And I think Sam Cooke was trying to get that message across in that song.
Yeah, for sure. That seems to be a foundational theme.
One other thing that I think we do, believe it and we live it. And as I had indicated, we're both pretty much A personalities. We go pretty hard. But every morning when we get up, we have a smile on our face. We're happy. We're glad to be there. And we kind of greet the world that way.
Do you want to be more specific, Ron, before we turn on the microphone?
Sure.
Microphones, you gave us a little more detail.
Okay. This goes back a long time, and actually it's been 27 years that we've been doing this. But every morning when we wake up, we kind of smile at each other, and we say, "Are we going to greet the day?" And we say, "Yes." And we say, "Hello, day." And that was kind of a derivation from an old honeymooners scene where Jackie was teaching.
We're talking Jackie Gleason.
Jackie Gleason was teaching Norton how to play golf, and he said the first thing you have to do is address the ball. And Norton says, "Hello, ball," and it caused a lot of laughter, and we laugh at that every morning and have for 27 years.
Very good. Let's hear the song, What a Wonderful World, by Sam Cooke.
Don't know much about history. Don't know much about I love you. And I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be.
That was What a Wonderful World by Sam Cooke. If you're just joining us, our guests today are Lucie and Ron Saylor. Lucie and Ron, you were telling us about how you start your day and a little bit about how you got into volunteering. I'd like you to fill us in a little bit more, if you would, on your work with the Emmanuel Thrift Shop. How did you get involved in that?
I had been doing some volunteer work at the church, and one of the parishioners called me one day and asked if I would be treasurer of the thrift shop. And I paused, and then after I quit laughing, because that had never been my strong suit. In fact, my husband balances my checkbook. So she said, "Oh, no, I didn't mean that. I want you to be the person," and it's called a donor chair at the thrift shop, to help determine which agencies in the community of Moore County we will donate money to.
So the donor chair referring to the donations of the money that comes through the thrift shop to various organizations in the
That is
area.
correct, because we are a total volunteer organization. We have over 70 volunteers, no paid staff. So every bit of the money that we take in goes back to the community. And so I started as donor chair at the thrift shop and went out to the over 30-some agencies and interviewed them all, because I wanted to be sure that the money was going to the appropriate agencies in the community. So I did that for a couple of years, and then our chairman of the thrift shop, which would be the president, had to leave and asked me if I would step up. And I did, and I've been there ever since.
Your term has been extended?
I laugh, Ron and I both, that in the bylaws it says 2 years. Well, that was 8 years ago. And I don't know how many of you do volunteer work. I'm sure there are quite a few of you listeners. But if you do any kind of a decent job, you tend to get that job for a long time. And now Ron has joined me as the treasurer, and I will have to tell you this. I took him kicking and screaming initially, but now he's the last one to close that door. He loves it as much as I do.
Ron, you have found something that is special to you, it sounds like.
Well, when she first asked me, I was playing golf, and the thrift shop was more of a ladies' thing to me, and not a lot of fellows in that. I said, I don't think so. And she says, you've at least got to try it. Well, there are a number of fellows that work in the thrift shop and do a lot of really good things. And it is amazing what those 70 volunteers do and how friendly they are, how nice. It makes it a really pleasant place to work.
Are you still serving as treasurer?
I have been treasurer for 4 years. I still am. I also sell. I also pick up when people can't make donations or get them to the place. We're probably spending 15, 20 hours a week at that little store.
As treasurer, you know something about the flow of money. Tell us how it works in the thrift shop in terms of where the donations come from, and then on the far end, where the money ends up going. How does that operate?
The donations come from all over the community, and the donations are generally small items for kitchen, some jewelry, and mostly clothes. And so once those are all donated, and we pay for none of that. All of that is voluntarily donated, and a lot of the donations come in clothing, still have the price tags on it, have never been worn. We can get some really high-quality items. And then once that donation comes in, and that's usually on Mondays and Wednesdays from 9 until 12 o'clock, the doors are open for donations. Our little ferry workers, those that are work the magic dust in the back room, take all those donations. They either wash them and iron them or inspect them and then price them and get them out on the sales floor. And then on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 9 o'clock in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, and we do the selling. And that continues on throughout the year, except for a couple of weeks in December.
We have a wonderful 96-year-old that comes every Wednesday and takes care of our shoes. She shines them, polishes them. No shoe goes out for sale that she has not seen and taken care of.
96 years old. That's great. Lucie, I want to come back in a few minutes here to your comment about it being completely volunteer, because I know that's a very significant consideration when people are thinking about supporting a charity organization as to how the money gets used, what kind of overhead there is. But before we get there, tell us about this song, Hands by Jewel, that you've identified. How does that fit in?
I think that it immediately made me think of all of the hands that it takes to operate our thrift shop. And it would not run without the hands of those volunteers. So every helping hand, and I know there's a whole lot more to that song by Joel than I'm describing, but at least that's what hit me.
Well, that certainly is a significant theme in that song. Hands operating to do God's work in a world that is hurting in many areas. Let's hear the song, Hands by Jewel.
If I could tell the world just one thing, it would be that we're all okay. And not to worry, 'cause worry is waste.
That was Hands by Jewel. Our guests today are Lucie and Ron Saylor. Lucie, we were commenting during the song, and we were talking before we came into the studio about one of the lines in that song, in the end, only kindness matters. What's your perspective on that?
That is so very true. And in fact, Ron and I were just commenting the other day about how many people come into our shop who need kindness. They just need someone to listen to them. When we work on Saturdays, we often have regular customers, and we know the ones that come in, and all they want to do, they may buy a $1 necktie or pick up a 50-cent T-shirt, but they just want somebody to listen to them. So we're in the kindness business. That's part of what our 70 volunteers understand. That's why they're there.
Tell us something about the kind of organizations that the money from the thrift shop goes to.
Well, high on our list and a prerequisite for an agency is that they be in Moore County. We try to do a cross-section that we benefit children, that we benefit the elderly, we benefit the military, animal groups, the mentally challenged, the Boys and Girls Club, and we do 4-H programs. We help with teen pregnancy, just a wide spectrum that we like to cover.
A tremendous variety. It strikes me that it's reflective of the wide-ranging needs that there are in the area.
Absolutely. And we rely on our parishioners to recommend agencies that maybe we're not aware of, that we will look into.
We have 37 that we donate to at the present time.
Tell us something about the dollars involved and maybe a little bit of the history.
Yes. The organization has been in existence 84 years. And it started out in the Depression time, and it was originally set up to help people through the Depression. Over that period of time, I tried to go back and estimate the amount of money put back into the community, and I believe a fair figure would be just over $2.5 million
Wow.
over that period.
Remarkable.
This year, we anticipate probably $70,000 to $72,000 being available for these 30-some organizations in Moore County.
That's fabulous. Tell us, Lucie and Ron, why you do what you do.
Well, I would just say, topmost, that we both feel very blessed. We were fortunate to grow up with good homes and happy environments, and we're in good health, and we just feel that we need to share our joy and our blessings with others.
Ron?
That's true, and it gives us an opportunity to give back to the community. I think both of us were involved in that all of our life, and I think our parents kind of instilled that in us even from a young age. And I think that in doing this, it not only helps, but it makes us feel good too. To be able to contribute and to give something back to, even though we weren't raised in this community, it's still a giving back to the world, to the community in a form that we are able to do. And very frankly, we're not the only ones, because as we pointed out, there's 70 volunteers in the thrift shop. If you look at the other organizations in Southern Pines, where the Habitat for Humanity and the Coalition for Human Care and the thrift shop out in Whispering Pines and that, they all have volunteers, and the entire community is a wonderful place when it comes to that.
Well, it strikes me that you two are great examples of what one can do with one's time when you're in a position to have some discretion as to how that time gets spent. And it also ties in to something we were talking about before we came into the studio, how the thrift shop with which you're involved really enables others through donations to make a significant difference. We've got the donors that are on the front end of the thrift shop's merchandising stream.
It's amazing how often people will come in and bring things and say, I didn't know you were here. I didn't know you took donations. I've been taking my things to Goodwill or to the Coalition. And to be perfectly honest, the Coalition was started by a group of ministers in our area a number of years ago, of which our church was a part. So we don't conflict at all. One time when I took over, I had one volunteer who said, we don't need to give to them. They're taking away from us. And I said, no, they're not. We're all in this together. We're one big group of people all trying to help.
And to pick up on what you said, I think there are three areas where people benefit. One, as you said, the donors that give the merchandise to us really feel good about being able to help out. But then we have the people that come in and purchase it, and they can purchase it at a very low price. In many instances, it's families that are struggling and can't afford a great deal, and they'll spend $30 and have 5 or 6 or 7 outfits for them. And then, of course, the ultimate is after the money comes into our organization, we then send it back out into the community in a welfare situation to all of these different organizations.
You've identified another song that fits in here, Sunshine on My Shoulders by John Denver. Why are we playing that song?
I jumped at that one.
What is it about that one, Lucie, that gets your attention?
I just think Ron and I both, because we feel so very blessed, that sunshine every day. In fact, it's so funny, when I lived in Iowa, we would have these long months where you wouldn't see the sunshine. And people would say, oh, just keep a lot of lights on. So that John Denver song is very special. And when you hear it, you can't help but smile.
And it kind of depicts what goes on in the thrift shop. There's a lot of sunshine there.
Absolutely.
And when people walk in, they see us having a lot of fun and a lot of smiles and a lot of laughter. And that kind of sets the tune for our entire shop.
Well, Lucie and Ron, it's been a real treat to have you here. I know we haven't covered all of the volunteer work that you do, but I commend you for it and thank you for the example that you set for me and others.
Well, thank you for having us, and we just encourage anyone who is idle and thinks they can't make a difference to find a place to volunteer.
And, again, thank you also. But it also is nice for retired people to have a purpose. And this gives a purpose in life, too.
Thank you again. Let's hear the song by John Denver, Sunshine on My Shoulders. You've been listening to Grace Notes, a special program here on Life 103.1 featuring people who may be relatively unknown, but who meet life's challenges in ways that brighten the lives of those around them. Our producer is Christina Dolan. I'm Alan Button, and we invite you to join all of us here at the station again next Friday at 5:30 for Grace Notes on Life 103.1.